All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Those of you that are out there, come on in. There's always room. All right, by the way, Brian, it's hard to come back from a great break like that, but let me tell you something. I had the distinct pleasure of seeing those B200s live in operation, along with Brent, about a month ago? Folks, I can only describe it as a cliff dive and a rock concert all in one. It was, and it smelled like glory. It was wonderful. And so you guys are soon to inherit that type of opportunity that right now is existing in cities like New York. So, okay, well, so we talked about Moonshot, and you heard some reference to Hydra, Brian's great partner. So let's bring up our next presenter. He's a serial technology entrepreneur, writer, and the CEO and co-founder of Hydra Host, a venture-backed AI data center services and management company and one of the world's largest GPU management platforms. He has written extensively on artificial intelligence, trade policy, and technology competition, and is a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal and the Fox News Network. He's also co-founder of Fabius Labs and a Foundation for American Innovation, and serves as a policy and AI advisor to a number of elected officials and heads of state. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium Mr. Aaron Ginn.
Use that? It's that one right there. Yeah. This one? Oh, okay. In case you want a more artificial image of me, that's me. This is the real life version. So yeah, I'm here on behalf of one of our VPs, Nick. Suzy's been doing a lot of work out here in Kansas and also with many of the partners listed. So I am the CEO and co-founder. Nick, unfortunately, I had to force him to go to a conference I didn't want to go to. So you have me. But I am from the great state of Texas. It's the big thing at the bottom of the map. But I lived in California for about 10 years. Currently, we're basing the operation in Colorado because I love the Mountain West. And we started this company around 5 years ago with this thesis that data centers were going to be, that data centers were going to be essentially scarce, and that we saw a shift happening in the infrastructure layer that was going to transform the way the cloud was going to work. And our first data center deployment was in Phoenix, and we started working with a tier 4 data center there. And we were trying to migrate people away from the cloud, and we basically saw all these problems in which the data center was not in a position to serve end customers. Today, we are in over 50 data centers in the world. We manage around 50,000 GPUs. We're in 15 countries. We also are the key provider to, let's say, notable telcos like FTP in Southeast Asia. We're doing a project with SoftBank. In America, we are the go-to-market provider for Charter and Verizon. And we have a number of key sovereign accounts like President Bukele in El Salvador, and a couple projects in the Gulf region that will be announced probably for the end of this year. And the thesis of our space, or the thesis that we saw in the space, was essentially that there was a large amount of abstraction that was built into the CPU cloud that required that commercialization happen at that layer. And that as Jensen, primarily Jensen, continued to iterate on his next version of accelerated infrastructure, that there was going to be a significant change in which how things were going to transact. You can imagine that if you, let's use, since Airbus is here, we'll use a commercial airlines example, that under the CPU cloud, imagine that Airbus sent a plane with no software, and that software had to be provided by Azure. And as you'll know about any type of manufacturing today, that if you have a hard material asset like an airplane, the software actually becomes the key integration point into which you have interaction, because we're predominantly a software-driven world. Tesla, same thesis, where the hardware itself is actually a complementary good to the software. The software is the core product, which allows Elon to continue to build his company really around being a software-enabled company that has hardware as a byproduct. Apple is another example of this. So what Jensen was doing was essentially continuing to iterate on the hardware layer until he can eventually become the Apple of silicon, or become Boeing or Airbus that actually had software built into it, as if the avionics itself came with the airplane. You get the airplane, you're done. That was the direction that we were seeing in the infrastructure, in this next generation of accelerated infrastructure, which actually created the ability for OpenAI to even exist. First, cause was infrastructure, second cause was Sam Altman. And so as this shift happened, providers that were, let's say, in Kansas or even in other secondary markets like Ohio, a little bit, Colorado's a bit of a tier 3 market, as in lower tier, not tier 3 as in data center. What we saw was the fact of like these providers are now going to be in a position of providing an end good that previously they weren't before because of the work that Jensen was doing, where he was compressing the stack to him, where he can become a transaction point, which means that everything deployed into the data center becomes the commercialization layer. There's no more cloud, there's no more any of these like big public cloud companies. You just go to a data center and get what you want. And that's essentially what we're living in today. The reason why we have all these data centers built everywhere in the world. Second cause is AI. First cause is a completely change in infrastructure. The monopoly that was the three guys is dead. Jensen killed the public cloud. So that's why we're all here today. So you should thank Jensen by buying some NVIDIA stock. Maybe we'll be an $8 trillion company one day. So as previously, there was, as you see with the chart, AWS had to be vertically integrated. So you had to do all these like magical things to make CPUs work. Even just talking about like the basic hardware of how a CPU is delivered, is the reason why you needed all these services built into the actual hardware of a CPU was because, simply put, the management of the CPU and the customer workload was commingled together. So if you had, let's say, 256 gigs of RAM, you had to share that between your actual management of the product and the actual consumer workload. So you needed to virtualize the thing. And so the first step that Jensen did was he separated that. He developed what we today call the HGX, DGX, future BGX baseboard, where everything that is outside of Jensen is passively running the machine and to transitions you into the actual Jensen Gold, which is the baseboard. So that's the thing that looks like the eight cards. It rises up. It's the most expensive part of the server. It generally occupies like 80% of the cost of the server. So that was like one of his first steps he did, which is like he separated at a hardware level between the CPUs on the server and the GPU baseboard. So therefore, management workload runs on the CPU. That's the Intel AMD stuff. Now he has the new version, which is called Grace, which is doing this. So that's a Jensen-owned CPU. So that first step, from the ground up, it's basically agnostic, because the workload that's going into the management side, the workload that's going into the customer side are completely segmented. Then he started doing more things. He basically, he started doing his own NICs, he started doing his own cables, he started doing his own networking gear. And the idea is that the data center itself can basically be in a position to where it can serve an end customer, and all these become resegmented in the stack. So that's what we're seeing happening in the market is tooling is becoming segmented outside of public cloud. You're seeing marketplaces being developed. You're seeing NVIDIA providing software that previously only resided in the public cloud. And so what we do is essentially we provide an API that unifies all the data centers in the world. We want to be the largest AI factory coming SaaS platforms. And that what they're providing an inference product or some form of like helping you train, they're actually not going to become an infrastructure company, because in a world where you're disaggregated from the actual fundamental asset and the actual underlying asset is the transaction point, the CapEx actually leaves. And this is why you see with like, probably like this building. This building was probably land's owned by somebody else, building is owned by somebody else, managed by somebody else. That's the future we're going to, where the actual infrastructure of the data center becomes completely owned by somebody else, like a REIT, basically, where that side of the stack becomes experts at collateralizing debt. And then there's a higher level software abstractions that really are just EVs, or so the enterprise value of that company is high software margins. So in a verticalized thing, all that was commingled together because the underlying product, the CPU, all of it was commingled. Like as in you had to, from the base start, separate out at the CPU level, customer and management. But in this future world where all that's already segmented out of the box, this whole new world is being built. And so if you're in here thinking, well, why doesn't AWS, Google, or Azure, go do this yourself? Just go look at what they're doing. They're signing deals with local data centers. They could do it themselves. Why don't they want to do it? Because they want to hold the debt. And they also see in their own data that people aren't staying anymore. They're coming, using Jensen, they're using AMD, and then they leave, and they go somewhere else. It's becoming a highly disaggregated, highly disparate market. And you talk to AI companies, and I've lived through, like, I basically got in Silicon Valley during the mobile boom. We talked to any tech companies then, nobody rented from more than one provider. Everyone was on one. Talk to any company today, all of them are renting from like 5, 10 different people. They're looking for price here, they're looking for location, they're looking for a different type of GPU. So they're going for chip, they're not going for cloud. And that's where essentially Kansas can enter into the market that previously was inaccessible, is that all this is being refractured. And the more that you pick a part of the stack to play and you really excel at that, the more people will be drawn to you because this stuff is not as location dependent as it used to be. And it's also highly, it is no longer driven by any type of vertical type of motion like previously with the CPUs. It's going to be continually disparate where you can just install gear, launch, and people come for gear. They don't come for cloud. And so you see this actually in the price of the GPU, that on the hyperscaler side, they have to run at a higher expense threshold. One is that they have hundreds of thousands of people. Two is that they're operating in basically old types of tiering of data center infrastructure that's very unlikely to actually continue for accelerated computing. And the third is that if you think that, really you're just coming for Jensen Gold, then you can always offer Jensen Gold at a better price. And that is something that hyperscalers just can't win at. And so what is their response? Well, of course, build their own silicon. Because if they offer their own silicon, they can basically provide a loss leader into their cloud fabric that actually makes you stay. That's why they're doing that. Before they had some experience with their own silicon, but in reality, it was like a secondary byproduct of their business. Now they have to do it because nobody's staying. Everyone's coming for Jensen, then they leave when they're done. Once they spend that $400,000 worth of credits, they go. And so they have to compete at the silicon layer. This is why they're building their own silicon to try to make it as a loss leader so they can continue to compete in the market. So we, as a universal API, we've been focusing on continuing to automate data center infrastructure so that it can basically be as turnkey as possible. And we provide all the infrastructure code environment, assuming all these things are happening in the market, that you're gonna go to a data center because it has power. You're gonna go to a data center because it abides by some sovereignty aspect. You go to a data center because it's cheap. All those things are actually get to be expressed now into the infrastructure market because public cloud is dead. And we're gonna be serving markets like Wichita. We have half of our data centers are here, and they're all in places that are super fun and interesting. Working on the sovereign data center in Alaska with the state of Alaska. And to see the fact that something that previously resides to Northern California, Phoenix, and Virginia now can go to the world. Now that American manufacturing, American silicon can be occupying all these different data centers around the world. It's a very exciting time to be an American. To see that the Gulf region is willing to spend $1 trillion on not just they love weapons from us, but now they have something that actually can transform their country. They can provide better education, better healthcare, better government services, and that America can be the footprint, peaceful footprint of soft power expression so where they can be a part of this revolution. Like America made this. So we also feel very, very, very proud, as well as this type of revolution the next type of infrastructure is going to impact everyone in America, not just those who are Ivy Leaguers or those who live in San Francisco, where I used to live. It's really bad. Don't live there. It's very, very bad. As you can tell, I vote the right way. It's going to be to all types of Americans. And so states like Kansas can actually enter in this, be extremely competitive. And I hope that you do undercut Northern California. I hope you do undercut Virginia. Because customers need this. We want AI to be cheaper. Our product assumes GPUs will continually get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. As it gets cheaper, more people will use it. More people use it means Kansas uses it, right? So you should be excited. This is going to be a great wave that will not be isolated to the coasts. It's going to go all around the world. And the more that you build a key part of that supply chain, the more that other people will come here and take that key part of that supply chain. So yeah, thanks for your time.